right, welcome in everybody to the deep dive. We're going to jump right into it today, right into some pretty wild stuff that happened after the Chinese Grand Prix, focusing on those post-race disqualifications, especially for Charles Leclerc from Ferrari and, well, Lewis Hamilton too.
Yeah.
And we've got some great stuff to unpack, specifically an article from ESPN where Ferrari actually comes out and addresses these disqualifications and takes some responsibility.
It was definitely something people were talking about, especially coming as late as it did, after the race was like over and done.
Right, yeah.
Podium, everything, yeah.
So what we're hoping to do today is go beyond just those headlines and actually figure out like the specific reasons for these disqualifications, dig into how Ferrari's explaining things and really understand what this whole situation tells us about how F1 teams, how they kind of have to walk this tightrope with all the rules and regs,
Right.
So let's start with this double disqualification. The ESPN article, it confirms that Ferrari admits to making mistakes that led to both Leclerc and Hamilton being, well, basically scrubbed from the results.
Yeah.
Leclerc finished 5th and Hamilton 6th initially.
Right.
I mean, a double disqualification. How often do you see that? What does that really even mean for a team?
Yeah, for a team like Ferrari especially, it's a big deal.
Yeah.
It's not just one driver having a problem. It's both cars,
right,
failing those post-race checks. And the fact that, we heard about it hours after all the celebrations and interviews were over, it kind of makes you think that there was a lot of scrambling going on behind the scenes,
Yeah.
While the FIA was doing those checks,
yeah,
it really puts the spotlight on their whole operation, like how they're running things and, their quality control. Big time.
And the article mentions that this is actually the first time ever in Ferrari's, 75 years in Formula One that they've had a double disqualification. I mean, that's pretty intense. It shows you how serious this is for them.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Ferrari, they're practically F1, right? They're synonymous with the sport. To have a historical first like this and not a good one at that, it's got to be tough.
Right.
No team wants a record like that, especially a team like Ferrari with their history and all the resources they have.
Okay, let's break down the reasons they were disqualified. What exactly were the rule violations? The ESPN article goes into detail for each driver, starting with Leclerc.
Yeah, so with Leclerc, they found his car to be underweight. It was below the minimum weight limit when they checked it after the race.
Yeah.
And the rules are super clear. A car has to weigh at least 800 kilos, that's after the race, with all the fuel drained out. And they said Leclerc's car was right on the limit at first, but then when they got rid of the last bit of fuel, it came in 1 kilogram underweight.
1 kilogram.
Yeah.
That is unbelievable to me. That's such a small, like a tiny, tiny difference can lead to something so big, a disqualification. It makes you think about how precise these teams have to be to get it right.
Right. They're always trying to shave off even a little bit of weight, every gram they can to make the car faster,
yeah,
right?
Right.
And so they try to get as close to that 800 kilo mark as possible without going under. So it takes a lot of planning, very precise calculations about how much fuel they'll need, how much each part of the car weighs, even how much wear and tear there'll be during the race.
Yeah.
So for them to miss it by a kilo, it really is cutting it very, very close.
Yeah.
Like a tiny margin of error.
And with Hamilton, his disqualification was different, right? Something about a skid plank.
Right. So with Hamilton, they found too much wear on the rear skid plank of his car.
Yeah.
The rules say you can only have 9 millimeters of wear max.
Okay.
And when the FIA measured Hamilton's, it was 0.5 millimeters over that limit.
Half a millimeter. Again, these margins are crazy small, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the article explains it as like a strip of wood or composite material under the car.
Yeah.
Why are there even rules about how much it can wear down?
Well, that skid plank is important, you see.
Mm-hmm.
The FIA measures it to make sure that teams aren't running their cars too low to the ground.
Okay.
Because, when a car is really close to the track, it can get a lot more downforce, which helps with grip and speed in the corners.
Right.
But it can also be dangerous if the car, bottoms out too much. So the wear limit is a way to keep things safe and fair.
Yeah.
Teams can't just go crazy trying to get an advantage by sacrificing the skid plank.
Now, Gasly from Alpine, he ended up getting disqualified too, right?
Oh, yeah.
For being underweight, just like Leclerc. 1 kilogram under, same as Leclerc.
Yeah, that's right. Gasly originally finished 11th, just outside the points, but he was disqualified for being 1 kilogram underweight.
Huh.
same as Leclerc. So it wasn't just Ferrari struggling with this.
Right.
It kind of makes you think maybe there was something else going on too. Maybe something to do with the track conditions that day or the specific tires they were using. Maybe teams underestimated how those things would affect the final weight.
So let's talk about how Ferrari's explaining all this.
Right.
The ESPN article has a quote from them, a statement where they admit they made mistakes, but they're adamant that they weren't trying to cheat.
Right.
No intention to gain any advantage, they say.
Yeah.
So how do they explain Leclerc's car being underweight?
Well, they're saying that Leclerc's car ended up underweight because his tires wore down a lot more than they expected.
Okay.
Because they chose to go with a one-stop strategy.
Right.
The idea is that as tires wear down, they lose some of their mass.
Right.
So combine that with the fact that they drained all the fuel, and that could have pushed the car's weight under the limit.
Okay, that kind of makes sense, but I mean, these teams are super sophisticated, right?
Yeah.
They run all these simulations and stuff before the race.
Right.
Shouldn't they have a pretty good idea of how much the tires are going to wear down?
They should, yeah.
And how much weight that'll be. So could this be a sign that they messed up their strategy planning?
Yeah, it's possible.
Like maybe a miscalculation somewhere.
Yeah, they do have really detailed models and stuff, but, things happen in a race, unexpected things.
Yeah.
Maybe the grip levels weren't what they thought, or the track temperature changed, or even, little incidents can affect how much the tires wear down.
Yeah.
And it's tough to predict those things perfectly. So maybe they did make a mistake in their calculations.
Right.
Or maybe they just got unlucky. Maybe some unexpected things happened that pushed them just over the edge.
So what about Hamilton's skid plank?
Yeah.
How did Ferrari explain that? They said it was a slight misjudgment of consumption. I mean, that's pretty vague. What does that even mean?
Yeah, it is a little vague.
Yeah.
Maybe what they're saying is they miscalculated how they set up the ride height,
Okay.
They didn't take into account how much fuel they'd be using and how the tires would wear down.
Right.
As the car uses up fuel, it gets lighter.
Yeah.
Right? And then if the tires wear down, the car might ride a bit lower.
Yeah.
And all that means the skid plank is closer to the track, so it's going to wear down more.
Okay.
So maybe when they said slight misjudgment, they meant that they didn't realize how much wear there would be in those specific conditions.
In this race, yeah.
Yeah.
Ferrari's statement also said that they're going to learn from this and make sure it doesn't happen again. And they said they were sorry, disappointed for the team and the fans. I mean, it sounds like they're doing some damage control.
Yeah, definitely. And F1, especially for a team like Ferrari, with fans all over the world, it's really important to be open and honest, even when you screw up.
Yeah.
It's about keeping your reputation and showing that you respect the rules.
Okay, let's zoom out a bit and talk about the rules themselves.
Okay.
The article talks about that 800 kilo weight limit and the 9mm max wear for the skid plank.
Right.
Why are those specific numbers so important?
Well, those rules are there to keep things fair for everyone.
Okay.
That minimum weight rule, it's to stop the richer teams from just building cars that are super light and therefore super fast just because they have more money. Right? It forces all the teams to be smart and efficient in how they design and build their cars.
Yeah.
And the skid plank rule, as we talked about, is to make sure that no one's getting a crazy advantage by running their car dangerously low to the ground.
Okay.
And the FIA, they're really strict about checking everything after the race. That's how they make sure everyone's playing by the rules and the competition stays fair.
There's one more thing in the article that I wanted to mention. It says that in the first lap, Leclerc had that collision with Hamilton, right?
Right.
And it damaged his front wing end plate, and they had to replace it.
Yeah.
They replaced it before they weighed the car. So could that have had anything to do with the weight issue?
It's an interesting thought.
Yeah.
I mean, a front wing end plate isn't that heavy, but in F1, they keep track of every gram.
Right.
So if they took one part off and put a new one on, that would definitely change the car's weight.
Yeah.
But remember that Leclerc's car was underweight after they took all the fuel out.
Right.
So that means that even with the new end plate, the car was already very close to the limit before they even drained the fuel.
Right.
So it's more likely that the real problem was the tire wear, like Ferrari said.
The extra wear, yeah.
Yeah.
That probably pushed them over the edge.
Probably, yeah.
So to sum it all up, we had a pretty dramatic ending to the Chinese Grand Prix. Ferrari had a double disqualification, which is super rare for them.
Right.
Leclerc's car was underweight, probably because of those tires wearing down more than expected.
Yeah.
And Hamilton had too much wear on his skid plank, maybe because of a miscalculation in how they set up the car.
Right.
And Ferrari's taken responsibility for the mistakes, saying they weren't trying to cheat.
Yeah.
But it really shows how small the margins are in F1, how precise these teams have to be.
It really does.
They're operating under some seriously strict rules.
Yeah, and, it just goes to show how complex this sport is.
Right.
Even a tiny mistake, a little miscalculation, or something unexpected happening, it can have huge consequences.
Right, yeah.
Especially with the FIA watching so closely.
Right. Well, this has been a really, really interesting look at all the drama behind these disqualifications. It makes you think, right, when you hear about a single kilogram or half a millimeter making such a big difference, it's mind-blowing.
It is.
How much precision is involved in F1. Every decision matters, from designing the car to planning the race strategy.
It all matters, yeah.
And it's such a delicate balance between pushing for the best performance and staying within the rules.
Absolutely.
Thanks for taking the time to deep dive with us.
You got it.